And welcome back to Delaware Boys Dynasty Football Podcast with your host in the top left, top right corner. Joined as always by AJ and Frankie. Guys, it's good to have you back. We haven't had you on in probably a week and a half, 2 weeks together. So welcome back, boys. It's always good to talk. It's always good to see you guys.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
What up?
Before I get started, man, not football related, I do want to give a shout out to my mom and to my brother. Last week, my mom graduated with her bachelor's degree in business administration and communications from Wilmington University. So congratulations, Mom. I'm very proud of you. You know, keep inspiring, keep doing great things. Tomorrow, I'll be up at 4 a.m. My brother will graduate.
Go Mama Chalmers.
Go Mama Chalmers. Thank you. And tomorrow, my brother graduates from the University of Delaware with a degree in business. So I just want to say, Tyler, if you're listening, I know you listen to every podcast. Congratulations. We're proud of you. Keep doing your thing. Keep changing the world.
Yeah, Tyler. Woo!
Way to go, man.
Thank you. Deli, anything for the people before we get started?
Yeah, you got touched on everything. Today we're covering just rebuild versus win now. But before you even get started, go ahead, click down there, subscribe, like the video. I know it's a little premature to ask for a like. It helps us out a lot. Gets us out to more people, and that goes a long way for the channel. Any support we can get, we're trying to get to the top, but we just got to start the grind now.
Deli, you were telling me 2,200 impressions on the video, the last video we made. High number. 2,200 people saw it. Obviously, doesn't mean everybody clicked on it, watched it, but views were the highest views it's been since our second video when the hype was around the channel. Everything, views fell off a little bit just due to, the constant subscribers constant people not coming into watching. But the highest video we've had per views, subs are, I want to say it sits at like 34 right now. Last week we were at 24. So we're 10 subs up in a week. Great thing. Beautiful thing. Keep doing what you guys are doing. We're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, it's great. Not only that,
I love the support.
The fact that we're moving up with viewers, our unique viewers are up too. So it's not just our friends that are watching anymore. Now we're starting to be like a real platform outside of that.
Yeah, and we appreciate you guys. We really do. We love producing the content, and we appreciate you guys coming back. Diverse group here. We all have different strategies when it comes to Dynasty football. I'm a mix. I love having a mix of veterans / young guys. Deli, you're the same way. Frankie, your leagues vary. Strategies vary for you. What's your dream roster like when it comes to it? Are you a guy who likes to have those vets to win now for a 2-3 year window? Do you like guys long term? What do you like to do?
I kind of like to take the season by one kind of season at a time. Ideally, you want to have young, valuable pieces on your roster is how I like to have a dynasty roster built. Maybe not necessarily always going to be, excuse me, with the eye rub there, but maybe not necessarily always, the biggest names per se, but people that just hold value. So like a young rookie wide receiver or a wide receiver that just flashed at the end of his second season is somebody good to have on your roster to go into the off season. My ideal strategy is if you're in a win now window to seize it, just go all out. If your team is going to be good enough to compete, don't hoard those draft picks because you're going to be drafting at the end of the first round or the end of the whole draft anyway. Go after it. Go after those teams that are in rebuild mode. Get rid of those draft picks to get some better players and seize that opportunity because it's not going to come every single season. Injuries happen, and that's when fantasy football is not so fun. So if you got a window, you gotta take it.
I agree with you. AJ, you are notorious for retooling your team every season. I've never seen you go into the off season and following into the next season with the same roster. Break it down for me, man. Give me your strategy. What are you looking to do?
I stay in win now mode. I've never rebuilt, and I've been playing Dynasty since 2008, 9, whatever it is. I'm just too competitive to just take a year off of, all right, I'm just going to let this year wash and hoard draft picks. But the thing is, I do always end up with quite a few draft picks going into the offseason every year. This year was a little different. I did not like the draft class, so I had one pick in every draft, and it was towards the back end, and I was able to get James Cook in every draft. He was the one guy I liked out of this whole class. But typically, I like to, get my veterans that I know are gonna produce every single year. And at the same time, like I said, I have draft picks. Typically, what I do, I get those draft picks. I like to think I'm pretty good at hitting on the rookies. I know this is a weird strategy. Not a lot of people do it, but it feels like when I hit on those rookies, I trade them right after their rookie year, get a vet that is solid, additional pick following, if that makes sense. So, like, I was able to have Jamar Chase into 2 leagues, traded him. So I can acquire,
to me.
yeah, so I can acquire more assets and it still kept me in win now mode. It didn't push me back. The way I look at it, like I said, is I'm ready to win every single year. I like to think that I'm in the top 4 of every league that I am every year. My team has a shot every single year. I'm not content. I constantly have turnover every offseason. I just won a championship in a league. I'm going to rebuild that team to the players I think are going to hit next year. I like to strategically look at quarterbacks' playoff schedule. I like to go after quarterbacks that have a favorable playoff schedule come playoff time. If I see you're lining up against good defenses on the road, that quarterback is not going to be on my team, regardless if it's, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, whoever the case might be. It's just how I roll every single year.
I like that. Yeah, like I said, you retool more than anybody. You do it very fast. You got certain guys you go after. You have huge amount of shares. The one I can think of on the top of my head, I know you have a lot of shares of Stephon Diggs. That's the one player when I see, because we play in a lot of leagues together. That's one player I see on your roster consistently. Another being Austin Eckler, which you acquired both of them from me in various leagues. So yeah, a lot of trading going on, and for you, a lot of trading going on amongst us.
I do like to stack my players like that.
Yeah,
like if I'm all in on a player, I'm gonna try to get you in every league I can.
Right, Deli. When you build your roster, what's your main vision for your teams?
Well, first of all, let me go back to AJ real quick. So you say you don't rebuild, but I would say you rebuild through like proven players.
Right, literally, that's what it's hard to explain.
He retools.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good word for it.
I'll trade a good young asset and get somebody that's established like a Diggs. So like if I have a solid top 10 wide receiver that's 2 or 3 years into the league and I could trade him for say Stephon Diggs and more, I'm totally okay with that. Just use Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson as an example. If I can use one of those 2 to trade for Diggs, Kupp, Adams, and get pieces with it, I'm totally fine with that. Because week in and week out, those wide receivers can be equivalent. If not, my guys can outproduce those young guys.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I guess I have a question. Ryan, before you go, I have a question for AJ. So, like, the Dynasty community is built around the players of now, the players of the age that where they're going to carry you for various, let's say for wide receivers, 5 to 8 years on your roster. So like guys like Diggs, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, guys that are older going to their 28, 29-year seasons, their name or their value falls just because of the age thing. So age doesn't scare you when it comes to building your rosters at all, is what you're saying.
No, it doesn't scare me. That's not the word. I like to have a plan intact behind it. So like if I can have young guys on my bench sitting there while I have my aging guys in my starting roster, that's my most ideal thing. Or have some draft capital sitting there waiting for the next offseason or the following offseason, looking at it down the road. I live in a 2 to 3 year window. That's what the Dynasty community likes to say. But really, I think I live in a 1 to 2 year window. Year in and year out, like Frankie said, each year I'm judging things differently. I might value somebody way higher next year than I do right now, and they might be 27. If that makes sense.
I get what you're saying. Ryan, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had that question. I would have forgot it as we were speaking. So, but go ahead, buddy. So how do you when you're visioning your roster on your dynasty rosters, what do you look to do?
So I'll get into my whole thing with the rebuilds is like when you're doing roster construction. Let me just touch on this real quick, then I'll get into what I do. The most important thing about rebuilding in general, is you not always want to sit on your running backs. That's kind of like your last piece of your rebuild. So I'm kind of in the same way when I build my rosters, try to go receiver first when you can. Sometimes the draft doesn't fall your way. Because those guys have a much longer window than some of these running backs. I mean, I think the age of like bell cow running backs is pretty much over. So many teams are just going to committees nowadays. So, but as far as like constructing my roster, though, I always have a mix too. I'm very much so. I'm terrified to be in the 1 to 2 year window. I don't want to have to like go all out and try to win like 1 or 2 seasons just for me to have to rebuild for like 5 or 6 years or however long it takes. I don't know. But if it's up to me, I'd rather avoid rebuilds and like use my future picks on guys that have kind of already proven it in their second or third years instead of taking risks in the draft and me not hitting on somebody. I'd rather just move that pick for a guy that's already proven. But yeah, no, a healthy mix is important, I think. But for the most part, I think I'd try to keep it like 60-40 youth to vets.
I'll tell you what, if I ever got into a rebuild situation, I would not be good because I trade all my draft capital away. I hate draft capital. This will be the first year I've ever made a first round pick in any rookie draft I've ever done.
So wait, have any of you ever had to do a rebuild in the Dynasty League?
A complete rebuild, never.
Oh my God, it's so refreshing. It's one of the most refreshing things you'll ever do. I know it sounds terrifying and it sounds gross, like losing every week or whatever, but just like we're all in multiple leagues. Like that's very obvious. And most people that are going to be paying attention to this are probably in multiple leagues as well. So just having a league where you're like, you already know what to expect. Like you're just like, all right, like this week I'm going in. I have zero expectations. If I catch a W, that's dope. But I don't want to or hope to. And then you just go into the offseason just locked and loaded with the people that you basically are building your team around or the assets that you wanted to build your team around. And a lot of times it turns out to be trading draft capital for the players that you were eyeing up anyway. So the one time I had to do a rebuild, I don't even think I used the draft capital that I acquired. I basically had 6 first round picks. And I think I ended up drafting 1 player out of that 6. I don't remember the year, but you trade that draft capital away to the teams that weren't preparing for a rebuild and had a shitty year, and they did what Chalmers did and traded all their draft capital away. And now they're sitting there like, man, I got to show up to the draft or I got to participate in the draft, and I don't have no draft capital, and I just had the worst season of my life. So that's usually how I would advise going about a rebuild: is acquire that draft capital. And then as soon as the season's over, as soon as that season starts dwindling down and you have those teams that had a bad year and don't have draft capital, that's when you go nuclear and you just start picking people off.
But I think, though, it's different. Like I traded for the 101 in AJ's league. There's a huge deal involving Jonathan Taylor. That's the only reason, because I love Breece Hall so much as a prospect. That's the only reason I made the deal. But also in that same day, 3 picks later, I traded with Marshall to get Treylon Burks, another rookie I'm very high on. I think you can acquire draft capital if you're willing to pay the price, especially when you're with the boys drinking. Anything can happen. I mean, we all know Marshall. Marshall made 5 trades in that day.
But that's kind of my point, right? Like,
right, yeah. That's what
if you're the one with all of the draft capital and it comes time to everybody having to look to make those moves, they're only looking. They're looking at one person. They're looking at the guy who just sat back and took all those L's, and y'all were all making fun of, talking about, oh, you only scored 80 points. Guess what? Now I got Jonathan Taylor because you wanted Breece Hall. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, and I know that wasn't the exact trade, but that's what you got to do. It's a patience game. It sucks when it happens, but once you're sitting there with all the ammunition to take everybody else's shit away, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like AJ, man. Like it's nothing personal. Like we all have had injuries come to fantasy football. It sucks. We've all, trades don't work out in our favor. Sometimes we have better years than others, but it's just the thing is like we put so much time, investment, and money into this. It's just like, fuck, I do not want to sit back and have a chance. What I mean? That's just how I look at it.
Yeah.
If I'm not playing for a playoff spot with a chance to win, I think it's a bad year for me.
And another thing, like, sorry to cut you off, but like, you don't know what you're getting out of those rookies. Like, if I have a proven vet that's been solid 4, 5, 6, even 7 years, not counting quarterbacks, like, I know what I'm getting out of them. I don't know what I'm getting out of a Chris Olave or a Jameson Williams. Does Williams come back looking the same off the ACL tear? Just using this class as a reference. But and I know
already.
What was that?
Jameis loves Olave already. Said he was smooth.
Smooth.
But you just never know what you're gonna get. Like,
I agree. I get it.
I'm a guy like with your Brees Hall, like is he gonna come in and be great right away for fantasy? More than likely, I don't think so. But he could prove me wrong to be a top 12 running back. I see, top 18 more realistic. But I know that's splitting hairs a little bit, but I'd rather, I'd rather have a Jonathan Taylor. I know what I'm getting out of him.
Sure. But I also
that's what fantasy's about.
Right. And I also, and like the trade was CeeDee Lamb and the 101 for Jonathan Taylor. And I also got, it was CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith, and the 101 for Jonathan Taylor. Kind of hard to not accept when I already had Najee, Eckler, and Javonte Williams on the roster at the same time. I get Brees Hall, one of my favorite running back prospects. I get CeeDee Lamb, who I traded in the Jamar Chase deal. I get him back. And then Devontae Smith landed me Treylon Burks. So in my offseason, I think I had a good offseason when it came to that. But I trade all the time. We all trade all the time. Honestly, I think the hardest person to trade in this room that doesn't trade all the time is Deli. Deli trades the least out of us four.
They don't want to trade me.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Deli. I don't like trading AJ either.
I will not get fucked.
I trade with AJ. Me and AJ, I think me and AJ have made like 5 trades in the past like 2 months. 6 trades. It's been, we trade.
AJ's a good trade partner. I just give him a hard time because
Frankie don't like trading me either.
He was my first ever Dynasty trade partner, and he took advantage of it because not only was it my first year in Dynasty, it was my first ever fantasy football.
It wasn't even that bad. It was his first ever draft.
It was
the same night of the draft. I traded him at the time. It was Frank Gore and Matt Forte for Sean McCoy. And I was like, he was like,
there was something else.
He thought he had to do a 2 for 2. I just offered the 2 running backs for Shady. And he was like, well, would you do it if I threw Reggie Wayne in there? I was like, yeah, I'd do that. I'm just doing Frank Gore and Matt Forte for Shady. And he's like, oh, okay, here's Reggie Wayne too. I'm like, okay, I'll take Reggie Wayne. Like,
hey, it happens.
That's like 2008, 2009 though.
I had no idea what I was doing, but I forgave him for taking advantage of me.
We're still
He
talking
got me
about
drunk
that
and
today.
took advantage of me.
Look, Frankie, man, that day we drafted at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I traded you Devontae Adams straight up for OBJ.
For Odell.
And it just because I was all in on OBJ, bro. All in.
His first year in Cleveland.
Going to the Browns. Yeah, I was like, man, this is gonna be a stellar team here. OBJ and Baker. Baker just broke the rookie touchdown record. I was like, man, they're gonna ball out. Man, fuck no. No, they didn't ball out.
No, he did not. No, but I think AJ kind of brought up a good point just to get back to the rebuild thing. I think it's important to kind of plan your rebuild as well. Like there's certain draft classes that it is worth making a rebuild. Because I know I said you want to trade those picks, but it's only worth trading those picks if people want the players that are going to be there. So like I jogged my memory sitting here talking about all this fantasy football history. The rebuild year I had was Leonard Fournette's year. I was in love with Leonard Fournette as a prospect when he was at LSU. I think I told the whole Dynasty league I was in when he was a freshman, I was like, guys, I don't care what has to happen. I'm getting Leonard Fournette on my team. And I sure enough did draft Leonard Fournette in the draft that he came out, but I ended up trading him away. I don't remember what the deal was, but I traded all those draft picks as well because if I remember correctly, that was a pretty solid draft. But yeah, I think it's very important. Like 2023 is going to be a pretty good draft class. So I think it's a really good year to do a rebuild if you are in need to do a rebuild. 2023 is a very solid draft class. After that, I would say you kind of just maybe want to take a look and see what you can do with the rest of your 2024, 2025 picks if you're in a league like Sleeper that takes advantage of the future picks.
Well, look at Davis in our league. He just made a trade with AJ for 2 first-round picks in 2023. I think he now owns 7 first-round picks in 2023. Again, we don't know how they're going to fall, but we were talking, and I do think there's realistically 7 studs in this draft. 7 up top, straight just studs. AJ doesn't necessarily agree on CJ Stroud. Obviously, the Ohio State quarterback thing doesn't always pan out. But between, like I said, I mean, you know the class. This class is loaded. We all know it. And that's Davis's strategy. That was a strategy coming in. He wanted to build through the 2023 class. I think it's a good class to do it. Like I said, 7 first-round picks in 2023. It's a hell of a start. But I'll be honest with you. I'm one of those guys. I don't know how to rebuild. I don't even know I don't hold draft capital. I don't know what that means. I got no goddamn clue.
That's what I was going to ask Frankie. Now, when you did that rebuild, I mean, I know I was in the league. I don't remember. Did you keep any veterans as well? Like, did you have like a couple pillars that you wanted to build around to go along, or did you just go full out rebuild? I've never done it as well.
I kept a wide receiver again. I don't remember the whole team. I've been in quite a few fantasy football leagues and dynasty leagues, but I kept a wide receiver, and we were in a single quarterback league. So I'm pretty sure I traded for a quarterback like right at the end of the season. I didn't end up drafting one. But yeah, you want to have at least like 1 or 2 foundational pieces. And Deli brought it up earlier, so I don't want to step on the point too much. I'll let him elaborate a little bit, but having a running back right now, I think, is the best way to start your rebuild. Making sure you have at least 1 solid RB1. If you can't even make sure you have an RB2, I think it's a solid. Oh no, that's just okay. My bad.
Deli loves wide receivers. Deli's a wide.
I love wide receivers too. I just think the best way to start a rebuild is with running backs because you can get a wide receiver a little bit easier. Is what I was going to say.
I'm on the opposite side because it's like running backs have such a short shelf life. By the time you build your running backs and you're trying to get those receivers to stack in, those running backs are already injury prone or kind of falling off 3-4 years into your rebuild. I've been in a dynasty league with this guy for 2 years, and he's been rebuilding since the draft. He likes to rebuild, but it's just not working out for him, and I don't ever want to go through that.
No, I think that's fair. Well, I think example I have is I had J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers on a team last year that I think I traded AJ. He ended up giving me Tyson Williams and J.K. Dobbins, and I don't remember what the trade was, but like I stashed Dobbins and Akers with them being hurt, and then I eventually was able to trade for some wide receivers and then drafted Drake London with the 3rd overall pick. So like I said, I think it's just a little bit easier to get a good wide receiver or draft a good wide receiver in a good position than it is to like say, so Breece Hall, he's going to come in right away and compete with Michael Carter. Like most of the time, running backs aren't, like you said, Deli, there's not a lot of bell cows anymore. So you're not going to see a lot of running backs get drafted into a bell cow situation. Najee was kind of the exception to that rule. But like Najee, Zeke, you're going to have the exceptions, but running backs don't typically get drafted into a bell cow situation.
Right. Even Derrick Henry sat for a couple seasons.
Right.
Yeah.
DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, like I said,
who was there?
It's tough, man.
Fair, but still, Derrick Henry's. Look at that guy compared to DeMarco Murray. Even then,
and they never even used DeMarco in the right. Like like he had his best season in Tennessee. Then he gets traded to Philly, and they try to run him to a zone scheme, outside scheme. It didn't work. But
Frankie was a huge DeMarco Murray fan.
Yeah, he got me a silver in the Dynasty League. I had him the year that he snapped, and then I lost in the championship because I think he either sat or had a terrible week 16.
But because we play in so many super flexes, if you were going to hold one staple on your roster, guys, does it have to be quarterback, or do you think like you know what I mean? Because in super flex, if you don't have, I think it's hard to win without good QB pairings. If you don't have one, let's just say great to elite quarterback, are you trying to acquire that during your rebuild at some way or some point? Or are you just hoping to hit on a QB in a draft?
Oh, I'm
Go ahead,
absolutely
Dilly.
sorry, Frankie. I'm absolutely moving for a quarterback ASAP. Drafting him gets a little sketchy. You never know. Some guys just don't translate to the league, and they just end up burning a high-end pick on a quarterback that doesn't really work out. That's always scary. I think that when you're rebuilding, in rebuild mode, just try to target the younger guys like a Mac Jones now, or even like if you can get Trevor Lawrence now at a discount if you get the right guy, is a great thing. But that's if you're rebuilding. But if you're already in win now mode, just get a quarterback. I mean, they play forever.
Duval, that's my guy, T-Law out here. Let's go. That's a great
Yeah.
pick. I got
Sunshine.
T-Law in 2 dynasty leagues. I think that's a really good point. If you can get a good young quarterback, I think that's the best way to start, because I think it's kind of hard to get a hold of the guys that you're kind of talking about, the Lamar Allens, the Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons of the world. Like it's tough to get those guys on your roster, but if you can get a guy like Trevor Lawrence and then ship him for, in a deal for one of those guys a little bit later, if again your win now window hits, I think that's your best opportunity. Or even if a guy like Trevor Lawrence can turn into the prospect that everybody's put him as, then now you have a great quarterback on your roster. So I think getting a quarterback is very important, but I think you just have to, again, kind of be mindful of how you do it. Don't hold to your guns necessarily, because you're not always going to be right. You have to admit when you're wrong, and you gotta be not afraid to pull the cord a little early if you have to.
So me, AJ, and Ryan play in a league, the armchair league. So guy just went full rebuild, hated his roster, traded Lamar Jackson, traded Alvin Kamara, traded Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he went full rebuild, full sell in literally 2 days span. I acquired Aaron Rodgers. I'm a big fan of Justin Fields, but I do think it is a scary situation when it comes to owning Justin Fields. I do think his value based on where he was drafted, and his stock now has plummeted drastically. So I guess my question to you is Aaron Rodgers, 38, going into 39-year season. We're talking about what, 17, 18 years in the NFL. In a rebuild, you know what you're going to get with Rodgers. Are you holding Rodgers for that chance to win, the year after, or are you selling him just because of the age? Is he one of those guys you were like, I have to sell Rodgers because he doesn't fit your timeline? Let's just say that.
I think it depends on your roster construction. How many picks do you have going into next year? I mean, if you're confident that you can get his replacement in your drafts, I'm holding Rodgers for sure. But if you're willing to go all in, I'm talking hypothetically. I've never went through this. Like, if you're willing to go all in on the rebuild, I feel like you have to trade him. You'll definitely be able to get at least 1 first-round pick for Rodgers. There's going to be people out there that's willing to pay. I mean, I gave up a first this year for Brady, just so I can have that win now mode with Watson. I don't know what's going on with that. I got to have somebody in place. Rodgers is definitely going to bring in a first-round pick. But if you're not in a full rebuild, but you're in a slight rebuild where you got 3 first-round picks, a couple second-round picks, that's still a rebuild to me. You can still keep Rodgers, let him retire with you, and then you can still compete the following year. Maybe even that year, if you hit on those rookies, draft those rookies in that rebuild, like Frankie said, and trade them. You can trade those pieces away. Just because you rebuilt at that draft doesn't mean that your team doesn't turn into win now a week or a month later, right after you draft those guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
you got to be not afraid to pull the trigger when you're in a rebuild too. You have to kind of realize that draft picks are more valuable when they're draft picks and on draft day than they are after they actually become players. Once a person gets into a situation, obviously he becomes a little bit less valuable because you can see the competition. So when it's a possibility, when it's a draft pick, it's a little bit more valuable. So try not to be too timid when it comes to pulling the trigger. But I think something else that's important when it comes to rebuilding is making sure you're getting value back in the trades. I know I said you got to make sure you get that draft capital, and you might not necessarily have the most competitive roster, but you want to get guys that are going to have value long term, or at least even in the short term. So like a guy like Robert Woods is a guy that I think is a good person to have on a rebuilding roster, because I think you can move him in season to a team that's competing that might be like just one wide receiver short or one flex position short, and you can get a 2023 second off of them, or a 2023 first if it's a late first off of them, and they're just like, damn, I really just need this one more piece to compete. Let me go ahead and get Robert Woods. So I think you just have to be mindful of the value that you're getting back with the draft capital that you're receiving.
Absolutely. Second round picks, I feel like, go overlooked.
Yes.
If you can hoard 3, 4, 5 of those second round picks, trade a couple of those with a Robert Woods to move up to 106, 107. I see that happen a lot in Dynasty formats. The second round picks, I feel like, are so much easier to get as well. Like a Robert Woods, I'm willing to give that up than somebody else, like a Mike Evans, something like that that's aging. You can get a second round pick for him. That's a great point.
I know I missed out on the last little bit, but here's the thing about addressing like getting older players in a rebuild. My brother, who I wish was on tonight, shout out Seth, love you, buddy. He's been through 3 rebuilds and he's learned something very quick through the middle of all of them. And the biggest thing he lives on is he doesn't see that player like winning on a championship on his roster, he's going to get rid of him. And honestly, it's worked for him so far. So, I mean, hey, I tend to lean towards more of that. If you're going to trade for a guy, make sure he's going to be able to win in that window. Instead of trading for Robert Woods, maybe go out and get somebody that's like 24, 20, like a Sutton. He's like 26 in a great situation. Russell Wilson would be a better piece than like a Robert Woods who only has like 1 or 2 years left.
Oh, no, sure. And I think that's a great point. I just kind of more or less meant like if Robert Woods is like your wide receiver 2, or you're depending on Robert Woods for high production, you might want to start thinking about a rebuild is more or less what I meant.
Okay.
And he's a good person to have on your roster to get that started, because you can start moving to get that capital. Sorry, I should have elaborated a little bit on that. That's a great point. Thank you, Deli.
Yeah. You got to know who you're trading with too. You got to know your league mates. You got to know which people are willing to go all in every single year. You got to know who is kind of, addicted to the draft picks because they love to gamble. There are people out there that are like, I need to be a part of the draft. Give me those picks. You got to factor in those league mates. I mean, you're in a dynasty. It's almost like a brotherhood with these people. I mean, you're in leagues together for years. I mean, you learn to know their ins and outs to the fantasy game, and you got to be mindful of that if you're going to put your all into that league every time.
AJ, so with your strategy, like I said, you retool a lot more than most. But say you play with a roster that you have and somebody isn't as willing to retool as much as you are. What is the biggest, like, we're going to do pros and cons. What's the biggest con of owning your roster with someone that's not looking to move people as much as you do? If you had that roster, just say,
biggest con to having my roster?
Yeah, let's just say you have a dynasty player. He's newer to the game. He has a roster that's older, more of a win now window like you have, and they don't retool as much as you do. They're new. They don't know the ins and outs of like the trading and things like that. Is there a con to owning a roster that's like more on the older side like you have?
Yeah, there's definitely a con because, I mean, more than likely, though, if they're content with keeping that win now roster, they're probably not trading their picks. A lot of the times you have 1 or 2 of those players in every league. If you don't, shout out to y'all. It's great having, a full league of just people that are continuously active and trying to, build a better dynasty roster rather than just a redraft roster or a mixture of both. But more than likely, the team that is in a win now mode that's just content with it, with those players, keeping those players 3-4 years long, I think the con is you're never gonna get that youth. You're not really involved with the youth. you're not going to be able to see those players bloom. You know, like when you drafted Javonte Williams, you're like, man, I could sit on this guy, and if he does take off, like a lot of people think he does, you're like, I was right on him from the beginning. And that feels good as a dynasty owner. But if you just, you know, you got Melvin Gordon since 2017 on your team, and you're just rocking with him, it's just not the same feeling in dynasty. I know we've all had those players that we were like, hell yeah. Like I know Steven has, I know you have, Frankie, Ryan. I know we're new to it, but I'm sure you have. I've had my guys. I've also been
Gonna
wrong
have
on
it
a
this
lot
year
of
with
guys.
Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, mine
I've
was
been
Josh
very
Allen.
wrong.
I love Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming. I had so
Yes,
much
you did.
pushback, and yeah, the first 2 years were shaky, but that third year, you're like, hell yeah, now he's the number one guy. But I was
But
also
you
high
didn't
on
own him anywhere.
I didn't, but I was also high on Jake Locker out of Washington like
Oh my
7-8 years
God.
ago. And so you get that feeling, but if you're just one of those guys that are content and stale, like I feel bad for you. I really do.
That's like in Deli's league. Justin Herbert was my guy. Loved Herbert. Nobody wanted to even consider that Justin Herbert could even be on the same caliber as Joe Burrow. Got Herbert real late in that draft. Herbert starts week 2 and becomes the stud we know Justin Herbert to be. AJ, in your league, the trade for Jamar Chase. Everybody wanted to talk about the drops. People were very worried and pressured about Jamar Chase. I took the chance. Jamar's Jamar, you know what I mean? It happens, but we are wrong. We're all wrong all the time when it comes to this. Like I said, we all have those guys that don't work out.
That's why quarterbacks should go high in the draft. They
Should.
slip every year, but I don't know. You got to take the risk on. They score the most points every single week.
So I think the con to the win now, if you're not as active as AJ is that you're going to have those panic trades that you're going to have to do at the end of the season or in the middle of the next season to make sure that you're still competitive. Because just because you had a win now team last year doesn't mean you're going to have a win now team next year if you don't make moves to stay competitive. That's the beauty of Dynasty, is that you can't be stagnant and be competitive. If you stay stagnant, you will eventually run yourself out of the league, or people will want you out of the league because you're A, boring, and B, it's an easy win for the people who are competitive and are actually putting, time and effort and money into this. So I think the downside to the win now is definitely you have to be more active. So if you're not willing to be as active as AJ or as even just, active in general, it's really tough to maintain a win now roster. You have to, if not, you want to do like what we said at the beginning and kind of have that middle ground where you have the win now pieces with the young studs to compete.
I agree with you. I guess my biggest thing is like when you sign up for Dynasty football, you understand that Dynasty is a 24/7, 365 thing.
Yep.
So like in AJ's league, the buy-in has increased. I can't remember what we started out 5 years ago. I can't tell you. Don't quote me. I want to say $100. Let's say 110. We're now up to 160. Chances is 200. You know what I mean? If you're willing to put that kind of money into it with the possibility of the payouts you're going to get and the cool prizes that we do, like AJ's league, player of the weeks, jersey at the end of the year, things like that, like those kind of things, the things that you want to win. If you're not willing to put in that time, that effort to strategize, become who you want to be as a dynasty owner and stay active, you know what I mean? Then you are going to reap what you sow at the end of the day.
Yep.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. We had people in leagues we played in that weren't active at all. I mean, we had IR players in positions, things like that. I agree with you. So the only thing, if you are going to play AJ strategy, you have to trade constantly.
Yep.
The minute you become stagnant is the minute you lose.
I got a question for Deli. So you said that you don't live in win now or rebuild. So can you touch on that a little bit? Because that's interesting.
I don't know. Here's the thing. I'm big on like my guys, and I think I can go out and kind of build a roster. Every year you see these people, like just like last year, Cooper Kupp. just went from like this to just fucking best receiver in the league in one season. Yeah. I think I've seen rosters where guys go out and get all vets. I don't want to do that given like, if you, like you say, sometimes you live in stagnant leagues where trades don't happen, and you have Dalvin Cook and you have Leonard Fournette and all these older guys that are about to hit the hay. You can't really get rid of them. So I'd rather kind of bet on my guys and trade for the guys that I think are going to have great seasons in the offseason, and then just hope that comes to fruition. And if I win, I win. I'm never going to be a guy that's going to go out and try to like go get, like, for example, Steven's gone and got Aaron Jones a couple leagues to go try and win now piece. I would never do that, especially with Aaron Jones' situation. But that's just like one nitpicky thing. But yeah, like for example, my biggest rebuild is like I think the team most I'm proud of from like when I drafted it to now is my Better Than Goodell. I started rebuilding with like went out and got Justin Jefferson. I already had DJ Moore rostered. Went out and got CeeDee Lamb. So you get these like high upside guys that can like win like either this year, or if not, they can just keep getting better with time. And then just to have like you said, like structural pieces to your roster. Like older vets, Keenan Allen or like a DeAndre Hopkins, just a guy that's you can put in your roster week in and week out that's gonna get you those solid points. But yeah, no, I don't. Like I said, I always stay in the middle ground, just hoping that I make that final push, making the moves that I like. But that's just me betting on myself because I believe in what I do.
So with the middle grounds, do you get like a veteran quarterback to build in that middle core, around the middle core?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like
most of my
Russ
rosters actually are like middle-aged quarterbacks, to be honest. But that's because I believe that quarterbacks can play into their late 30s and be perfectly fine.
Right.
You have
a perfect example. It's like Russ, Stafford, Cousins, somebody like that.
Yeah. And I'm fine with all those guys. Yeah.
Cousins is where you lose me, but yeah, I'm fine with all those guys.
Cousins is a solid,
Yeah, man, he's a solid
middle of the road quarterback.
I like
solid.
Yeah,
he's more of a QB2.
I was gonna say you said Russ and Stafford. Those guys are.
I was thinking of age-wise. They're all around 33, 34.
Okay.
Yeah,
my
Carr.
bad.
Carr too.
I think he's 32.
I got you.
Well, yeah, you own Russ in that league. You have Russ, and that's your QB too. I mean, granted, you can't ask for a better QB1 than Justin Herbert. I mean, that's a hell of a start. But the way I view your team is that you're a win now player in a middle of the ground, middle of the ground type of ownership. You have one guy over the age of 30 on your roster, being Russ.
That's it. Yeah.
You've built your elite talent. You built your elite talent, from these guys that are top tier at their positions that are young. You have Jefferson, you have Lamb, you have Herbert. Kittle is a little bit older for a skill position guy based off of his injury history, but you have Kittle. Kittle is one of your favorite players. I don't fault you for owning Kittle.
Isn't he only like 27?
Kittle's 28.
But it's 28. But it's just the games that he's missed, man. Kittle's
I'm not a Kittle guy. I didn't think he was as old as you just made him sound. You made him sound like he was like Darren Waller old.
They're only a year apart.
Damn near.
Waller's 29. He's 28. Kittle's 28 years old. But DJ Moore, these guys. That's your roster. Your roster is.
Don't forget Javonte, J.K. Dobbins.
That's what I don't remember your whole roster off the top of my head, but it's like you're a competing roster, but you're in a great situation to do whatever you want. You know what I mean? You can do whatever you want. If you feel like you're falling off, you trade Jefferson. If you feel like, you need some piece, you can trade anybody. You were deep. The way you built your Better Than Goodell team is a very solid roster. I think I don't think you have a set mold. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is like, I think it's important to remember that trading in season can also help you, because I was going in last season where I owned Trey Lance and Dak and Herbert. I kind of started falling off the wagon a little bit, so I moved the Lance in a package to go get Jefferson. Don't forget you can trade in season, make your team better, especially if you have extra depth at a position, go out and try and find and fill the holes that you need to go win yourself something.
My last question, and it's a big question. Do you guys ever have those players? I know everybody always says everybody has a price, everybody's tradable. Do you have those guys that you just fall in love with and it makes it really hard to trade those guys? I know everybody does. You ain't gonna lie to me, man.
Well, you want to go around the horn and say our favorite guys we wouldn't trade?
No, I'm just saying in general. Like, I mean, I know I have my guys that it makes it very hard for me to trade. Like Jamar Chase. I own multiple shares of Jamar Chase. It is hard to trade Jamar Chase. I mean, I tell everybody.
I think there's guys that are hard to trade, but I live by the rule that nobody's untradeable. Like, everybody's got a price tag. If you're willing to come at me and give me a value for a player that I can't say no to, then bye. No, like, this is
I get
still
that.
fantasy football. Like, this isn't real life. I don't know these guys. They're not paying my bills. They're not none of that. So yeah,
right.
I'm with Frankie 100%.
Coming at my neck for a guy, they can get him.
I guess
I traded Mahomes the other day. Like, I never thought I would. I think if there was one guy I don't ever trade, it's Travis Kelce, but we've already touched on that. Just because of how locked up that position is. But every other position and player, like, they're obtainable by anybody. It just depends on what that person's willing to pay for them.
Yeah, but then it comes to, like, for an example, I had a trade for a guy in one of our leagues for Jalen Waddle. We may know who we're talking about for a reference. He might be the biggest Dolphins fan I know and the biggest Jalen Waddle fan I know. He told me for Jalen Waddle, I have to give him Jamar Chase and a draft pick. And I said, realistically, that makes no goddamn sense. You know what I mean? It's just like, those are the guys that makes it hard to trade with. Another guy, Justin Herbert. Dude wanted Joe Burrow and Najee Harris for Justin Herbert. I was like, bro, I can't help you. But it's just guys like that. And I think that happens in the community a lot. I think people fall in love with players. They get attached to these guys and they're like, I can't see them not on my roster. You know what I mean?
But you have to also be – oh, go ahead, AJ.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
I was just going to say, like, you have to also take into account that there are certain guys that, like, you think it's going to be their season and you want to hold on to that guy. Like, if you went and got your guy, you don't want to give up on your guy before the season that you've been expecting him to have. Right. So I think it's also fair to be like, yeah, if you want this guy, you gotta come off of some crazy pieces. But like, if that's your guy and you think he's going to be wide receiver 1 or even a wide receiver 2 or a, top 5 wide receiver, you don't let him go for nothing. Like, Jamar Chase in a draft pick sounds crazy, but if Jamar Chase doesn't have a crazy season like he had last year, then some people are going to say Jamar Chase had a disappointing season. And if Jalen Waddle improves a little bit and has a better season than he had last year, you know what I'm saying? So it kind of balances it out if you look at it that way, but I wouldn't pay that price. Just saying, if that's your guy, keep your guy.
What I was going to say is a lot of those teams that don't want to hold on to those, or that do want to hold on to those players and have an unrealistic price for them, and they miss out on good trade opportunities, are ones that are usually, middle of the road, bottom of the pack, and at the end of the year in the standings. You sometimes you just can't pass up an offer regardless of how much you like that player. I'm sure if Chalmers got a ridiculous offer for Jamar Chase that he feels like is going to better his team, he's going to accept it. That's regardless of how much you think you love him, or if you think Jalen Waddle is going to break out and be a top 3 receiver this year. If somebody offers you a package you can't trade, you're gonna pull the trigger if you want to continuously be at the top of the standings. Just how I view it.
Like, Deli, you and Marshall.
Hold on. I'll stand on the hill by myself. That there's guys that I won't trade. Unless you blow my dick off. If you blow my dick off, then I'll fucking accept it. But, like, I don't know. If I own Jamar Chase or Javonte Williams, Justin Herbert, I'm not coming off those guys unless you pay.
So if they offered you a good trade, you wouldn't.
Oh yeah, I mean, if
that's what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I was going to say.
Some people are. I don't want to say the word, but some people are a little stupid, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not doing it," regardless if it's a good offer.
So
no.
Okay, so
that was my point. It's like, I'm like a big my guy, and even I would trade anybody if you're gonna give me like 2 firsts and a guy could start week 1 for Jamar Chase. Right.
But what you're saying is, Deli, is to acquire, because you own Justin Jefferson. You love Justin Jefferson. It's known. So for you to get Justin Jefferson from you, it's not going to be fair, adequate value. It's going to be you're going to overpay, and you're going to make me have to hit the accept button. That's where it's at. There's no in between with you when it comes to Justin Jefferson. You're going to overpay.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to walk away the trade winner legitly.
Yeah, but see, these are guys, we're talking top tier guys here. That's
Yeah,
why I
I'm
think
saying,
we're
like
kind
you
of,
said,
I think
everybody has
we're
a
kind of
price.
talking crazy here. Like, I think we have to go back down to like the Jalen Waddle type guys. Like, Jamar Chase is a guy you're not trading. Justin Jefferson's a guy you're not trading. Like, if you have those guys right now, you're not trading those guys until you see a decline or you see an opportunity to just cash out on an opportunity to get, just like Deli said, blow your dick off. But like Jalen Waddle, like if Jalen Waddle, if you think he's going to be good, you go out and you trade for him. Or even Chalmers, like you're saying, Breece Hall, like you went out and you paid the price to get Breece Hall. Like you paid that price, like, and now Breece Hall is your guy, and you're not going to trade Breece Hall for a bag of chips just because
No.
somebody else might say Michael Carter is going to take carries away from Breece Hall, or the Jets just went out and got all these wide receivers. Why the hell would they run the ball so much that they have two good running backs back there? Like, but you're not going to give up on Breece Hall before you get to see Breece Hall do anything. Like, that doesn't make sense. So he's an untouchable guy for you without being an untouchable guy. If somebody comes through with a Jonathan Taylor offer, you're not going to be like, it's Breece Hall. You're going to be like,
Oh,
all right,
no,
well, I
no,
guess
that's
I'm going to go
gone. Yeah,
ahead
yeah.
and add Jonathan Taylor to the roster. Click. So that's where I think we have to live, is if you have one of those top, 1-2 guys on your roster in Dynasty, you don't move those guys without a Godfather offer. But if you have a my guy, I think that's a little bit different. If you have a my guy, you have to have a realistic expectation of, I can move this guy for the right price, or I need to move this guy for the right price at the right time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Question
Yeah.
for you. You own Jamar Chase. I own Jamar Chase. You own Justin Jefferson. AJ, you have a share of Jefferson somewhere. I know you do. What do you trade him for? What are you trading Jamar Chase for? What does it take to get Jamar Chase from you? Realistically.
I need a wide receiver back. Obviously,
Yeah.
I can't just give away a
Right.
top tier wide receiver. And if I can get an asset with them. So if I don't like to do hypotheticals, but like if one of you guys were to offer me, just say like a T. Higgins, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson area. If you give me one of those receivers and another good piece, and maybe like a second round pick in that, I think that's what could get it done. Depending on what that second piece is.
So my answer to that question is, I'm not taking any draft capital back for any of those guys, because
that's why I said the second piece.
No, I got you. I'm just my answer, because I don't think those guys are so young that the draft capital, like, okay, I'm going to draft a guy who's going to come in and be the same age as Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. That doesn't even make sense. I already know what I'm going to get out of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. So why would I trade for the draft capital? Even if it's like you said, Jalen Waddle, if you throw Jalen Waddle and 2 firsts at me, if it's 2023 first, you pique my interest a little bit. But if it's like 2023 first, 2024 first, and Jalen Waddle, I'm just clicking decline, because A, 2024 is 2 years away, and B, I already know that Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase is a stud. I already know Justin Jefferson is a stud. Jalen Waddle, while we all love him, is still a gamble. He's on a team with a bad quarterback potentially and another number 1 wide receiver. So Jalen Waddle's a gamble. Draft pick's a gamble. If you're giving me 2 gambles, I'm out on the deal already, because Jamar Chase is a sure thing and Justin Jefferson's a sure thing. So if you want to come for one of those guys, it's got to be 2 studs, and it's most likely going to be a wide receiver 1 and a running back 1 or a quarterback 1.
And that's what I was getting at with the second piece. If I can get another good running back to go with a T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson S type of player, I'll more than likely hit accept for that, if my team needs it. But if I'm in win now mode, where I have a Jamar Chase and a Justin Jefferson and 2 other solid wide receivers, I'm not going to accept it, because I'm already in win now mode, and it doesn't really get better than them 2 outside of Cooper Kupp.
This motherfucker.
But see, I think Cooper Kupp is a good person to bring up in this exercise, though, because Cooper Kupp I would want to take some sort of draft capital back because Cooper Kupp is in his 30s. So
Absolutely.
if you're giving me a T. Higgins and some draft capital back, now that makes sense because I'm able to build a young roster from an older player. So instead of giving up youth to get youth, you're now giving up age to get youth, which I know is very easy math for people to do watching the podcast, but that's the way my calculus goes when it comes to trades. Like if I'm giving up the age, I need to get the youth back, like just off jump. That is the baseline level for the trade. Like, so that's just where I would say Cooper, like AJ's got Cooper Kupp as his wide receiver 2 and Jamar Chase as his wide receiver, or excuse me, Cooper Kupp's somehow moved up to his wide receiver 1 since we did the wide receiver pod.
He was wide receiver 1 on the pod.
Oh, I thought you said he was
He
number
was
2, but
he was.
Cooper Kupp
my
was
bad.
1.
That's my
He
bad
was.
for bad recall. So either way, Cooper Kupp's his wide receiver 1, Jamar Chase wide
God
receiver 2,
damn.
and Justin Jefferson's wide receiver 2. If you're trading Cooper Kupp, you got to get some sort of draft capital back. If you're trading Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, you need to get players that are studs back.
Well, that's how I don't like having an old roster. I hate having it. I traded for Mike Evans in AJ's league, and I didn't know what to do with myself.
I know it's late in the pod, but can we clarify what old is?
Old is any player, like I
Julio
said, running back.
Jones.
Stop.
Well,
That's
Julio
too
Jo-
old, AJ.
Julio
That's
Jones.
washed. I didn't
I'm just
say
referencing the
washed. I
jersey.
said old.
So, like, when I view a running back as old, I view a running back going into his second contract, and I usually like to move running backs by year 2 of the second contract or year 3 at the latest. Granted, Eckler doesn't have as lot of mileage on his body due to the fact that he's more of a receiving type back. This is his first year with a full running back workload carry load. I traded for Mixon in AJ's league. Mixon for Eckler swap, essentially. I know Mixon has a lot more quote unquote mileage. I was just a bigger fan of Mixon, and like I said, I like Mixon a lot. I like what the Cincinnati, what they've done for their off season. That's why I made the move. A little bit younger. But like with Evans is going into year 9 of his career. Big body receivers tend to break down by the age 30, 31 seasons. Julio Jones is a freak. Julio played, he's 34 now. He played wide receiver 1 football until he was 33 years old. He's a freak. Those are the guys you got to fade before it's too late. Your Des Bryants, guys like that. You got to fade them at some point. Evans is a clear fade. I traded for Evans.
30 is my mark. Like once you get to 30 for a skill position, quarterback's a little different. Quarterback, I think the old mark is 35. But for skill position players, tight end especially, I think tight end, Travis Kelce is the exception to the rule. But once you get to that 30 marker, it's tough. And wide receiver, like you said, Chalmers, once you get to 30, I just had my 30th birthday, so I can not just last year had my 30th birthday, I can attest to this. 30 is rough. So once you get to 30, and this was my rule before I personally turned 30, but 30 is my cutoff for fantasy. Once you're at 30, I got to get a good value back for you because that's age for me.
And you're right. There's always exceptions. Aaron Rodgers is playing wide receiver or QB1, and he has been ever since, he took over for Brett Favre. The dude's 38 going on 39 now. You roster Aaron Rodgers, you're okay with it. Travis Kelce, I was looking to dump Travis Kelce 2 years ago, and Kelsey's still balling.
Yeah.
There are exceptions. Frank Gore was an exception. Adrian Peterson was an exception. Guys like that, they always come along, but it's few and far between. Like
You
Mike
gotta have a
Evans,
backup plan though. You gotta have a backup plan.
yes, and I like Burks. That's why I had the backup plan with Burks. But as long as Evans has Brady, I feel confident that Evans can put up wide receiver 1 numbers. Evans is a fade for me, but I did trade for Evans to go along just because of the legal stuff that happened with Judy. And, you just never know. I know Evans is, if he's on the field for 17 games, he's guaranteed to be at least top 10, top 12. In that league, you got to really have strong play if you're going to win a championship. So,
quick question real quick, guys. We haven't really touched on win nows that much in this podcast so far, but if you were trying to win this year, right, and without saying Cooper Kupp, okay, who would you go out and get that's like kind of an older guy you think you can get for a value?
Mike Evans.
Just wide receiver.
Anybody. We're running back, receiver, tight end.
Aaron Jones, Mike Evans.
Alvin Kamara is my guy. I know he's
Hell
26
no.
isn't. I know 26 isn't old, but Alvin Kamara is my guy. He's been in the league a couple of years, so he's considered old. But he's one of the guys that I want to go out and grab for a win now roster. I know Chalmers hates him, and as a Saint, I personally, hate him. But Kamara is a guy. Without saying Cooper Kupp, I don't have really much of a wide receiver for that answer.
Keenan
You can't
Allen.
really get Cooper Kupp at a value.
Yeah,
anywhere.
Keenan is a good
Keenan
value.
is a good one. That's a good one. As far as running backs, I feel like Dalvin Cook has lost some value for whatever reason.
I'm never
Also
gonna
Leonard
be a Dalvin
Fournette.
Cook guy.
Fournette is a
That
huge
injury
one.
history with Dalvin Cook is always tough for me.
Yeah, but if you can lock up Madison, he gives you points behind Cook. That's a perfect stack there. I know that's not ideal. We're just talking win now, though. If you're going all in and you go get Cook, you got to get Madison with him. Like I said, Leonard Fournette is perfect. He's not as high valued as a Dalvin Cook or a Kamara or Derrick Henry, and he's going to put up just the same amount of points. We have a good O-line in Tampa, and he's a perfect value.
Yeah,
That's how you can get cheaper than Fournette. James Conner is a great running back to have on your roster as a later piece. Probably 2 touchdown dependent for some people in here.
Yeah, like 600 yards.
But the volume is there. This is a guy you're going to draft as a running back 4 in any league, and he's going to touch the ball 250 plus times. You can't ask for that.
Don't they still have Edmonds?
No,
he's on Miami.
You pay a late second round pick.
They just signed Darrell Williams.
Yeah.
Williams was a fantasy winner last year.
But anyway,
he was almost
QBs
Super Bowl MVP, wasn't he?
QBs too. Brady, perfect example. AJ needed a QB. He drew a first round pick for Tom Brady. You know what I mean?
It was pricey, but if you want to win, you got to win.
You got to pay to win. Right. So I don't think you can say Brady came at a discount for AJ, but most people are going to trade Brady for probably a second round.
No, that's a discount if you trade a first round pick and that first round pick. Yeah, if you trade a first round pick and it's the 12th pick or the 11th pick, that's a discount.
I mean, I agree with you. I do, but it's just like at this point, I always view those guys like Brady as a guy that'll never draw or never pay for his production. Never pay out. And he like Ryan,
unless you win,
unless you win, what I mean. But like Ryan, and I'm not saying AJ's wrong because he has Watson. I get it. I paid you a first for Matt Ryan last year. Who the fuck am I to say anything about paying a first for a quarterback?
I was actually going to bring up Matt Ryan because I feel like he might be fine this year with the Colts. And
I agree.
Value.
I paid for it with the Falcons.
Well,
I thought of a good wide receiver that's at a good discount. Be Amari Cooper. I feel like he's getting
super discounted,
undervalued there. Nobody knows what's going to happen there in Cleveland.
I think that's tough because nobody knows what's going on with Watson. If Watson's his quarterback, then
that's why if you can get him at a good price for like a flex option, I'm not saying a wide receiver 2 or 3, but people are out there selling Amari for cheap.
Yeah, for sure. Sutton too. Before this whole thing, I felt like Sutton had adequate value. Pretty cheap relatively. Sutton and Judy both, and then the Russ thing, their ADP kind of went up a little bit or kind of dropped a little bit based off that. But I felt like they were guys you could have acquired relatively cheap.
If anybody's willing to take the risk, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry.
Nope. AJ, you better shut the pod down. You just made Deli yawn with that Michael Thomas. You better stop. Man.
Hey, I'm not touching Slam Boy, but he's a veteran value. You could probably get him for the 3rd round pick at this point.
Yeah, you get him for a ham sandwich at this point, probably. He's trash.
With everybody down on Christian McCaffrey, you guys going in on Christian McCaffrey at all? If you can get him,
he's still valued too high.
Yeah, like people want to
treat
him as an RB5.
What's a discount? He went 109 in our startup.
Yeah, man. People still got too much value on McCaffrey and Barkley, for my opinion. But until I can see a full season out of either one of those two, I'm not paying that price.
I think Zeke's a good value.
Yes,
I do too. But Zeke. I did not like what I saw out of him at the end of the season last year. He had a great season to start, but I did not like the end of the season. Quick. He put that James Harden workout on.
Yeah.
Eddie Lacy.
Eddie Lacy. Allen Robinson too, man. That's a huge buy right now. Obviously ADP, he's valued more now, but Chicago, things like that before the trade, he was falling off the wide receiver planet. Now I expect Robinson to bounce back and have a huge year in LA, but I like him too. A guy I think is cheaper too, Mike Williams. I feel like people still don't value Mike Williams to the point where like he could put up top 15, top 20 numbers.
Always avoid going after guys that just had big contract years. That is a pitfall every time in fantasy football. Mike Williams needed to get paid, so he balled out. You are never going to get that production again from Mike Williams, in my personal opinion. Just like you said, James Conner, touchdown dependent. Mike Williams is a touchdown dependent wide receiver. If he's not scoring touchdowns, you ain't getting points out of Mike Williams. So
give me all the Chargers weapons.
Did he come away with 1,200 yards last year?
I was getting ready to say.
Didn't he come away with 1,200 yards?
What did I say first? He needed to get paid, so he balled out. When did he ever have close to 12? I don't even think he got over 1,000.
He still got Justin Herbert throwing him the ball, though.
Yeah.
Listen, I agree.
Here's the tricky thing about it is like going into the season, it was well known that Herbert and the Chargers were trying to get Mike Williams more involved. It was a contract year. You do tend to want to play your heart out to get your contract, but I feel like he'll be a steady part of that plan this year. Give me any Charger with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and Herbert he went out and said that he wanted to make sure they re-signed Williams. Like he's a perfect complement
with
for
the
Keenan.
Chargers take. I'm just disagreeing with the value take. I think Mike Williams' price is too high. You were talking. We were talking value, and people are taking Mike Williams as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in drafts. And again, he's got Herbert, so I agree with that part of the take. I'm not taking that chance on a guy who prior to last season you saw no production or no ability to stay on the field.
I just want to see where he was drafted at in our startup draft.
He was drafted in the 8th round.
Was it the 8th round?
It was right after Sutton, or right before Sutton.
Sutton was the 9th round.
No, Sutton was late, yeah. But
then it was the 9th then.
And 9th round, and I'd have to count the amount of wide receivers, but I think that's like where Sutton went.
3.
I think that was like 26 wide receivers. That's well outside, depending on your league.
So wide receiver 3.
That's a wide receiver 3. I'm paying that for Mike Williams. Absolutely.
For sure.
That's fair. I'll pay wide receiver 3 price, but I ain't paying more than that is kind of what I'm getting at. If we're talking value, I'm not paying over that price. I think he's fairly priced as a wide receiver 3. I think anything over that is a bad value for Mike Williams.
And I'll be honest with you, where you draft Mike Williams in the 9th, I'd rather own him over Devontae Smith, who took him in the 7th. Me personally. And then somebody reached for Judy in the 6th round. Not saying it's a terrible reach. I'm a big believer in Judy, but I think that's too high for Judy. I like Mike Williams. I'm a big fan of anybody on the Chargers. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. Like I said, I like the Chargers take. I just don't like the value take is all.
But other than that, boys, I think it was a good episode. I appreciate you guys' insight. I really don't know how to rebuild. Rebuilding is something I don't do very often. I never hold draft capital.
You think you did
Hit me up if you want rebuild advice, fellas.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So you think you did this podcast just to get some rebuilding tips?
No, I don't know how to rebuild. Bro.
You about to rebuild?
I don't know how to rebuild, bro.
Chalmers about to tear it down, fellas. We about to see Chalmers just come through with all the 2023 first next week.
No, he's gonna rebuild the podcast league.
If you see me trade Burrow, Dak, Chase, and Lamb in this draft or in AJ's league this week, come talk to me because I'm gonna try. I might try it, man. I do want to try it in one league, but it's not gonna be that league.
It's got to be whatever leagues you got Brees Hall in. There you go.
Got Brees Hall in a couple. So which one?
Both.
Both of them.
Nah, man, I ain't doing that. I'm good.
You got Bishop Sankey.
Nah. But other than that, boys, I appreciate it, man. Deli, anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Done.
Taking a stand tonight. Anybody else got anything to say?
I appreciate you guys having me back on.
Like, comment, subscribe, do Deli's thing. You know what I mean? He did it at the beginning. I'll do it at the end. Other than that, fellas, we are out.